There is a moment that happens every single night. A moment so brief, so easy to miss, that most people cross through it without ever knowing it existed. It happens in that space, that thin, trembling space, between the last thought you have as a waking person and the first breath you take as someone who has let the world go. It lasts maybe 30 seconds, maybe less, and in that 30 seconds, something extraordinary is possible. Not because of anything mystical, not because of anything that requires years of practice or a monastery on a mountain, but because in that precise moment the walls come down. The armor you wear all day, the skepticism, the worry, the performance, the protecting yourself from disappointment, all of it softens. All of it becomes permeable. And what enters a permeable mind enters completely. The ancients knew this. Every tradition in every corner of this earth developed something, a prayer, a chant, a breath, a word, specifically designed for that threshold. Not for the middle of the day when you are strong and defended. For that moment when you are finally, fully vulnerable. Tonight I want to share 3 words with you. 3 specific words that, when spoken in that threshold, not shouted, not forced, not performed, but quietly offered, like a whisper to the deepest part of yourself, can begin to reorganize the invisible field that surrounds your life. I want to tell you what those words are. But first, I need to tell you something that most teachers skip over. Because if you don't understand what comes before the words themselves won't reach far enough. Most people arrive at the end of the day carrying something they don't even have a name for. It isn't quite sadness. It isn't quite fear. It's a kind of dull heaviness, a low hum of unfinished things. The conversation that went sideways, the money that still hasn't moved, the person who still hasn't called, the body that still doesn't feel right, the life that still looks more like waiting than arriving. And with all of that sitting quietly on the chest, they lie down. They pull the covers up, they close their eyes, and they try in some way to reach for something better. But here is what nobody explains. You cannot reach upward from a contracted place. When the body is tight and the mind is rehearsing tomorrow's problems and the heart is bracing quietly for more disappointment, you are not open, you are armored. And no matter how sincere your intention is, it cannot fully penetrate armor. I learned this the slow way. I spent years wondering why certain practices worked for some people and seemed to do nothing for others. Same words, same tradition, same instruction, completely different results. The difference was never the technique. The difference was always the internal terrain in which the technique was planted. If you plant the most powerful seed in frozen ground, the seed cannot grow. It isn't broken. The ground is simply not ready to receive it. These 3 words I am about to share with you do something that most practices never address. They do not begin with intention. They begin with thawing. They begin with preparation. They work on the ground first before they plant anything at all. If this teaching is resonating with something inside you, I want to invite you to subscribe to this channel. Every week these teachings go deeper. Every week there is another layer of what has been forgotten being brought back into the light. Subscribe and hit the bell so the next teaching finds you the moment it arrives. Now, the first word. I want you to think about the posture of asking. When you ask for something, truly ask from a place of need. What does your body do? What does your energy do? It contracts slightly, doesn't it? There is a leaning forward, a kind of reaching. And underneath the reaching, if you are honest, there is always a small shadow of doubt. A whisper that says, but what if it doesn't come? That shadow is not weakness, it is completely human. But it is also interference. It is static on the signal you are trying to send. The first word removes that static, not by forcing confidence, not by pretending the doubt isn't there, but by shifting the posture entirely, from asking to receiving, from reaching outward to opening inward. The first word is receive. Not receive as in demand, not receive as in entitlement. Receive as in I am open. I am no longer braced. I am no longer leaning so hard into what I want that I have forgotten to make space for it to arrive. There is a story from a Zen lineage, old, simple, the kind of story that doesn't need decoration, about a student who came to a master and asked to be taught everything the master knew. The master poured tea into the student's cup. He poured it until the cup overflowed. Tea spilled across the table, across the floor, and the master looked at the student and said quietly, "You cannot receive anything new while you are already full." That is what this word does. When you say receive at the threshold of sleep, slowly, with full awareness of what you are declaring, something in the nervous system understands. The grip loosens, the bracing softens, the cup empties just enough to hold what is coming. The second word is where something old and stubborn lives in most of us. Something that was placed there long before we were old enough to question it, long before we had the language to push back against it. There are people, good people, sincere people, people who work hard and love well and have tried everything they know how to try, who carry a quiet belief that has never been spoken out loud, but that governs almost everything. The belief sounds like this: I will deserve it when I have done enough, when I have fixed this about myself, when I have finally gotten it together, when enough time has passed since the last mistake, when I have proven to myself or to something larger that I am ready. This belief is not laziness. It is not self-pity. It is actually the result of a kind of loyalty, a loyalty to experiences of loss, to voices from the past, to moments when life said not yet often enough that the heart began to agree. But here is what I know, after decades of sitting with these questions. The universe does not operate on a merit system. Water does not wait for the roots to prove themselves before it flows toward them. The sun does not decide which leaves deserve light and which must earn it first. The field of abundance that underlies all of reality is not withholding anything from you because you have not yet reached a certain score. What is blocking the flow is not a cosmic judgment. It is an internal contraction, a closed hand, a place inside you that does not fully believe it is allowed to receive. The second word opens that hand. The second word is worthy. Say it slowly. Say it the way you would say something true that you are only now beginning to trust again. Worthy. Not as performance, not as an affirmation you repeat until you convince yourself, but as a remembering, as a returning to something that was always true, before the world put so many conditions around it. Some of you felt something when I said that word. A little resistance, a small discomfort somewhere in the chest. That discomfort is not a sign that the word is wrong for you. That discomfort is exactly where the healing needs to go. I want to pause here, because if you have stayed with this teaching this far, something in you recognized it. Something in you leaned in rather than away. I want to ask you to do something simple. Write in the comments whatever it is you are ready to receive. One word is enough. Abundance, health, peace, love, clarity. Whatever it is that your soul has been quietly holding, waiting for permission to ask for out loud. Declare it. Declare it in this community, among people who are on the same journey you are on. Because a declaration made in the open carries a different weight than one made only in the silence of your own mind. Now, the third word. I want to tell you about something I witnessed once that I have never forgotten. I was visiting a small contemplative community, not large, not famous, tucked into a landscape that had the quality of a place time moves through more slowly. I was there for several weeks, and every evening, without exception, the elder who led the community would end the night practice with a single gesture. He would press both hands flat against his chest, close his eyes, and say one word, just one. I asked him, weeks into my stay, what that word meant. Why that word, every night, without variation? He looked at me for a long moment. Then he said something I have carried since. He said, most people spend their whole lives preparing to live. This word reminds me that the life I am waiting for is already happening. The third word works like that. It is not a demand. It is not impatience. It is not forcing the universe to deliver on a timeline. It is a declaration of alignment, a statement that the distance between where you are and where you are going has already begun to close, that the field is ready, that you are ready, that something is in motion even when you cannot see it yet. The third word is now. Not now as urgency, not now as desperation. Now as in, I am no longer pushing this into the future. I am no longer making my receiving conditional on what hasn't happened yet. I am planting this intention in the only moment that has ever actually existed. When you say receive, worthy, now, slowly in the trembling space between waking and sleep, you are doing three things at once. You are opening the field. You are removing the internal obstruction, and you are collapsing the distance between intention and arrival. And then, the most powerful thing of all happens. You let go. You don't carry the words into sleep. You don't rehearse them. You don't analyze whether you said them correctly or with enough feeling. You simply say them, and you release them, the way you would release a breath. The way you would release a bird from your open hand. And the work, the deep, invisible, inexplicable work, continues without you. I want to speak honestly about what you might experience after you begin this practice, because I think honesty matters more than inspiration when it comes to something real. Some nights, nothing will feel different. You will say the words, close your eyes, and wake up to a morning that looks exactly like the morning before. Do not mistake ordinary for empty. The most profound shifts in a human life almost never announce themselves loudly. They begin as something almost imperceptible, a slightly different response to a situation that used to derail you, a conversation that goes somewhere unexpected, a thought that appears from nowhere with a quality of clarity it didn't have before, a door you notice that you somehow never saw. The work happening beneath the surface of sleep is not dramatic, but it is real. There was a teaching I received from a woman, elderly, quiet, someone who had studied the intersection of contemplative practice and the inner life for longer than I had been alive, and she said this: transformation is not an event, it is a direction, and every single night that you choose what enters your mind in that threshold, you are choosing the direction again, not with force, not with striving, with the gentlest, most consistent act of self-care that exists. You are choosing what seeds go in. You are choosing what the ground receives. And the harvest does not rush, but it does come. There is something else I want you to understand about why this particular moment, this threshold between waking and sleep, holds the quality it holds. All day long, your mind is working at the surface, making decisions, filtering information, protecting, reacting, building and rebuilding the story of who you are and what is possible for you. And that is necessary. That is how we function in the world. But the filtering is also a kind of sealing. It keeps out what the rational mind has already decided is unlikely. It blocks frequencies that fall outside the range of what you have been conditioned to believe is available to you. It is efficient, and it is also limiting. In the threshold, in those 30 seconds, the filtering drops. What enters in those 30 seconds does not have to pass through the checkpoint. It goes directly into the deeper architecture, into the place where beliefs actually live, into the place where the body's responses are shaped, into the place where the frequency you carry through each day is quietly determined. Ancient traditions were not wrong to call this a sacred window. Every mystic tradition I have ever studied treated the entry into sleep as a moment of extraordinary spiritual significance. The Sufi poets wrote about it. The Hindu sages mapped it in the Mandukya Upanishad. The Aboriginal elders of Australia had practices specifically designed for the transition between worlds. The contemplatives of the Christian desert tradition had night prayers that were not about speaking to something outside themselves, but about tuning the inner instrument before it rested. They were all pointing at the same understanding. What you plant in the dark grows in the light. Tonight, I want you to try something. When you are ready to sleep, not before, not while you are still at your screen, not while you are still in the noise of the day, when you are actually lying down, when the room is quiet, when the body is beginning its own letting go, I want you to breathe 3 times, slowly, not as exercise, just as arrival, as a way of coming all the way into the present moment, into the body, into the stillness. And then, in the quietest voice your mind has, say these 3 words: receive, worthy, now. Say them once, with full presence, with real awareness of what you are actually declaring. Then let sleep come. Don't check whether it worked. Don't analyze the words. Don't try to extend the moment. Just let the natural current of sleep carry you, knowing that what you have planted in that threshold is already doing what it was designed to do. You have opened the field. You have removed the obstruction. You have collapsed the distance. The rest is not yours to manage. I have heard from many people over the years who have worked with threshold practices like this one, and the experiences they describe share a common quality that I find more interesting than any dramatic story of sudden change. They describe a shift in what they notice, not new circumstances arriving from nowhere, but existing circumstances suddenly visible in a new way. The opportunity that was always there, that somehow kept not registering. The quality in a person close to them that they somehow kept overlooking. The path that was always available, but that their internal noise was drowning out. This is the quieter miracle, the one that doesn't make for a dramatic story, but that changes a life more completely than drama ever could. When the inner field reorganizes, when the contraction softens, when the worthiness is restored, when the timing shifts from someday to now, perception changes. And when perception changes, the world you move through changes, because you are finally seeing it accurately, not as a place that withholds, not as a test you are perpetually failing, but as a field in motion, full of what has been waiting for you to become available to receive it. Receive, worthy, now. 3 words, said once in the dark with intention. Every night, without performance, without pressure, without the exhausting effort of trying to force what must simply be allowed. If this teaching reached you today, I do not think it reached you by accident. There is a quality of readiness that draws certain teachings to certain people at certain moments. And the fact that you are here at the end of this still listening, that is not a small thing. That is itself a sign of something already shifting in you. Before you go, I want to ask one thing. Support this channel by leaving a super thanks or by becoming a member to access the deeper teachings. Every contribution keeps these conversations alive and ensures they reach the people who need them most. This work exists because of the people who believe it matters. It does matter. You matter. And whatever it is that your life is moving toward, whatever it is that you have been quietly holding and waiting and hoping for, I believe it is closer than it appears. The field knows your name. You only have to stop bracing long enough to let it in. Tonight, when the world goes quiet and the day finally releases you, remember, receive, worthy, now. Sleep well and trust what moves in the dark.